Καλησπέρα σε όλες και όλους. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the 11th and final lecture, hybrid this time, of the 59th public lecture series of the Archaeological Research Unit of the University of Cyprus, titled Traveling Archaeologies. It is my honor to introduce our today's speaker, Rüdiger Krause, Professor for European Prehistory and Head of the Department of Prehistory at the Institute of Archaeological Sciences, Goethe-Universität Frankfurt am Main. Professor Krause studied prehistory and early history in Tübingen and in Munich between 1978 and 1982. During his studies, he participated in several excavations in Iraq, Jordan, and southern Germany, among other places. In 1983, he received his Magister Artium in Tübingen, and in 1986, his doctorate from the same institution, with a thesis on the early Bronze Age cemetery of Singen am Utwil. Subsequently, he received the travel grant of the German Archaeological Institute and traveled the Iberian Peninsula, North Africa, Near East, and Turkey. From 1987 to 2006, he worked at the Archaeological Monument Preservation in Stuttgart. In 2000, he received his habilitation at the Institute of Prehistoric Archaeology of the Free University of Berlin, with a thesis Studies on Copper and Early Bronze Age Metallurgy between the Carpathian Basin and the Black Sea. He has been holding the professorship of pre- and early European history at the Johann Wolfgang Goethe University in Frankfurt am Main since 2006. His research focuses on Bronze Age settlement and economic history, landscape history and environment, research on Bronze Age fortifications, as well as on early metallurgy and the mining of ores. He has conducted research projects on the Bronze Age fortification of Bernstorff with the spectacular gold and amber finds, on the Bronze Age Syntasta culture in the Trans-Ural on the northern edge of the Eurasian steppe. Professor Krause has been undertaking research for more than 10 years on the Bronze and Early Iron Age megasites on the eastern edge of the Hungarian plain in the Romanian Banat. It is on this work that our speaker will be focusing on for this lecture today. Closing this introduction, I would like to kindly ask all our participants on Zoom to keep their cameras off and their microphones muted. You may address your question directly to the speaker by raising your hand or unmuting the microphone. Also, you may switch on your camera after the end of the presentation. Dear Professor Krause, we thank you very much for our invitation, and we very much look forward to hearing you. The podium is yours. Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you very much for the nice introducing words. And first of all, or second of all, for this invitation to Nicosia, which I really appreciate very much. And well, we have a tradition in communication, and this is very nice that we continue with this. Yeah, I was proposing to talk about the late Bronze Age megasites in the Carpathian Basin and their relation to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. But I would like to start. I would like to start with a little bit longer introduction on the question of relations and the exchange of goods between Northern Europe, Southern Scandinavia, Central Europe, and the Mediterranean, especially the Mycenaean area and Eastern Mediterranean area. This is a map from Bernhard Hensel from Berlin from 2003, where he mapped prestige goods like Appas words, rapier, Mycenaean rapiers, axes, golden cups, and the last one are diadems made of gold. And you see them in Mycenae, but you see them also in one example in southern Germany. We will come back to that. But there is also a lot of other items, and quite recently, perhaps already 10 years ago, it was proved that the glass beds from the wooden coffins from the Nordic Bronze Age, that they come from the Eastern Mediterranean, from Mesopotamia and Egypt. Then we have the double axis. We have the folding chairs from graves in Nordic Bronze Age, which are copies of folding chairs from Egypt, and so on. And finally, the exciting thing is also that where's the mouse? There is no mouse here to show on the okay, yeah. And then finally, also objects that were just recently, recently, it's 10 or 15 years in archaeological timescales. This is recently discovered that there were also oxide ingots as pictograms on the panels of the Nordic Bronze Age. This is very exciting. We have also, for example, one in fragments here in southern Germany of oxide ingots, and of course now for the first time you see this on the map that Cyprus is almost not seen because of a lot of dots, but also with a red dot, so also figurines. Well, this is something I must not tell you here. I continue. We have also other objects, quite a bundle of objects, and one of the most exciting one is this lens type of Aegean, lens tip of Aegean type, which was found in a deposit, in a hoard deposit of the Unjetitze culture in Eastern Germany. And the items are very typical, as you can see here with the holes and the fish tail as at the end of the tip. And the important thing is we made metal analysis from that, and it was made by Unjetitze culture. It's a copy. It's not an original one. And if we look at the map, we see that the Kykladik type with the Griffzunge, I'm missing the English word right now, that they have a quite small distribution area in the Kykladik area, and the other type with the tangle goes further to the east, to Anatolia and so on. So this is definitely was copied, but obviously it was important to copy such a exotic type of tip or shape of tip, and it was necessary, and it was made by intentional. Yeah, the other questions we are always dealing with the Nordic Bronze Age and with many finds in Middle Europe and going to the south is the amber, the Baltic amber. And is this the gold from the north coming to the south? And we have a very intensive distribution of amber in the Middle Bronze Age, in our terms, and the Middle European terms. That means 15th, 14th century and downwards. And we know in the meanwhile that in these times, in the 14th century, amber went very far to the Eastern Mediterranean. And this is also the 14th century is the peak of this material going to the south. Yeah, here only some small, how do you say, maps or views on that. Very important are the amber finds, the huge amount of amber finds in the shaft graves of Mycenae, which we know since longer times, but Josef Maran was in 2004 writing a very nice article on that. And so what we nowadays can say is that the amber in Mycenae, in the Mycenaean cultural sphere, was a very important good, which obviously came from the north. And we have a lot of analyses, and we know that these analyses show that it was Baltic amber from the Baltic because of the typical so-called Baltic shoulder in the diagram. So we have a lot of amber finds in here in the map, coming from the north to the south, and I only very briefly will comment some facts and fictions and things from the Dunsdorf fortification, which is the largest fortification of the Middle Bronze Age, and spectacular findings were made by amateurs. This is the big problem. By amateurs and not during professional excavations, but very well documented and so on. And there is amber objects and there is these gold sheets. And as I said, it's the largest fortification of the 14th century. It's dated by a dendrochronology of the burned woods, because the whole fortification was burned down and at the length of 1.6 kilometers, and parts of the fortification were destroyed by gravel gaining, and only parts were excavated so far. We had a research project there, and together with Rupert Gebhardt, the director of the Archäologische Staatssammlung in München, we set up a big program, also analytics, and big controversy came out of that, and because it's a very pure gold. And but first, let me show that, for example, the diadem here was very carefully folded together. It's not just something like this, but very carefully folded together. And also this kind of needle, it's a very long needle, not a real needle, but it's very thin gold, was folded together. So there is a lot of hints that show us that it's an intentional deposit. It was an intentional deposit of this gold. The other interesting thing beneath the pure gold is that it's decorated in the local style. So it's the gold, I will comment this, is not a local gold, but the style of decoration is a local one. And of course, this object, this so-called diadem, is not a local object. It was not known, this shape of decoration, and and we have this extraordinary amber seal with the B writing, and this is identified on the Peloponnese, on the Western Peloponnese, the location of this name, and even in the hole here of this seal were part of the same gold. It's also analyzed the same pure gold as the other objects. And it's a very thin, Panvati, it's a very thin gold. And we are very sure that it's a result of a cementation process, probably of two cementation processes, and the gold was cleaned. And we know that from hundreds, almost written sources since the 3rd millennium in Mesopotamia and Egypt, that this was a very well-known habit to clean the gold, because if you wanted to use it for gold plating, it must be very, very clean, otherwise it would break. And this is the so-called red gold, and that was used for gold plating. And we are very sure that this gold was coming from the Eastern Mediterranean to Bernstorff, and then was then there. The objects were made out of that gold, which was not really the gold to make. I'm missing the word. To make not jewelries, but decoration objects out of that. So it probably was a gold which was misunderstood for using as making this different kind of items. Accessories, thank you, yes. So we think this kind of gold they knew that. It was probably put on rolls and like this, and this was a very important exchange of things, of objects, and so this can be called elite materials, like others. Amber was a very important commodity, and what we can see when we go down to the timetable, that it got more and more important in the later periods, and when you look at the finding places, the further it got to the south and to the southeast, it got more and more value. Yeah, here is a map which is very much full with different objects, but here we have the famous ship of Uluburun, everybody knows it, and at least 6 amber pieces which were drilled were found there. Of course, that was obviously much more, but the amber was swimming away. This was kept somehow underneath other objects, and well, yeah, this is one of the most important finds. And if we go back here, there will be another map. There were also new amber finds in the elite graves under the palace in Katna from the 14th century, found also by Peter Felsner 10 or 15 years ago, just recently again. And even a very nice 6 centimeter big head of a lion made of amber, of Baltic amber, and other objects made of Baltic amber. And if we go further, we find even Baltic amber in the collection of Tutankhamun's grave. Here in the chamber, you see there was this big box, and in this big box was a necklace of 6 feet dark red amber beds. And this is the most southeastern finding point of amber jewelries and amber necklaces we know so far. But it shows that this amber, which and the Mycenae seemed to have been a kind of crossing or connecting link, and the amber. This is the yellow points here with Uluburun and Katna, and then finally here in Theben with Tutankhamun's grave. The further east the amber came, the more value. It became the more value, and it was connected only with the highest level of elites, with the kings and so on. And on the other hand, I mean, this graph we made for the question of the Bernstorff gold. On the other hand, this kind of gold, this pure gold, that sheet gold, which we found in Bernstorff, must have come also from the Eastern Mediterranean, from Egypt or Near East. I mean, no analysis will help us to identify this, because the gold is clean. Many elements are taken away. So this is something I would like to was important for me to show as an introduction to that what I wanted to show you in the second part of the presentation. And it's especially the 14th century, which obviously there was a peak of materials and of influences and contacts and exchange in both directions, from the Eastern Mediterranean to Middle Europe up to Northern Europe, to the Nordic Bronze Age. And so far we might say that Mycenaean Greece hold a key function in this distribution. And that was, of course, amber, and of course gold as well, was a prestigious material for elites. And so I come to the second part. That was a long introduction. We had a big research program in Frankfurt for 4 years together with Sven Hansen from the German Archaeological Institute on fortified settlements of Bronze Age between Taunus and Carpathian Mountains. This is a map showing the so far mapped fortifications of that time. And I would like to focus on the big sites here in the eastern part of the Hungarian basin, east of the Tisza River, close to the Carpathian Mountains, and well, the other items there. It's a very interesting area because we know since long times that there were big zones flooded regularly, and so that big areas of these land and these landscapes couldn't be used for settlements, but in these kind of isles or kind of areas in between the flooding zones. Here, for example, is the Mureş River, Arad and Timișoara, and the other side I will show is north of Arad, Santana. And the very important task in this context is that the arc of the Carpathian Mountains, and especially the Apuseni Mountains, which are here between the arc of the Carpathian Mountains and the Hungarian basin, that there is a lot of metal and minerals like gold, tin, silver, copper, of course, iron, and what you also can see on this white shadow, a lot of salt. Siebenbürgen is famous for the salt, and in prehistory and also in historical times, of course. And those big, huge fortifications, and you see here, this is up to, well, this is the most biggest one with 1,700 hectares, incredible big. They are all situated, so to say, in the foreland of these rich ore mountains. And this is the idea and the model that here the distribution of all these different materials took place. So we have a very important transition in this area from the Middle to the Late Bronze Age. That means, in the local sense, the Middle Bronze Age, the tell settlements, they finish around, find an end around 1500 BC, and then from the 15th century BC onwards, Late Bronze Age, until the transition to the Iron Age at around 1100, 10th century, was important new time, so to say, because then new types of settlements appear. Open settlements, huge open settlements, not fortified, and fortified settlements. huge fortified settlements, and I would just take out two of them, Konest Iakuri and Santana. These are the places where we worked from Frankfurt together with the local partners in Timișoara and in Arad for more than 10 years, well, for 13 years. Just a small overview or look into the chronological sequence, and this is showing here what I just mentioned, that the transition from the late Bronze Age 1 with the end of the tell settlements, and then in the younger phases of the late Bronze Age, then we have these large fortifications and, for example, a lot of new items like hoard finds with gold, with a lot of gold like this. And so there is a mighty change between the first half of the second millennium and then the following centuries in the second half of the second millennium. This is again the area around the Moorish. Here you can see this is the Upper Seine Mountains, and with blue dots you see some major historical mining sites and mining areas, settlements, gold hoards with yellow, and the two big fortification sites, the two big or fortified sites of Konest and Santana. Konest is an incredible site. You even see here not the whole area, which is covered or defended and covered by the ramparts, but mainly rampart 1, 2, and 3, and the other one 4, and the other one 5 is not visible here on that aerial photograph, but partly here on the LiDAR scan. This is, I'm not showing a map with the whole distribution, but you see the diameter goes up to 6 kilometers. The total area which was covered is 17 square kilometers. Well, you see the total length of all ramparts is 33 kilometers. But what we can say now after our 10-year research is that only the inner part, Ring 1 and Ring 2, were settled, densely settled. Well, there were a lot of excavations started by the local partners through the fortification, and what we know and what we see is that this is mighty fortification lines with ramparts in two phases, like you can see there. It's wooden construction together with mud, with earth and wooden construction frameworks like that you see below. And very typical are ditches, deep, wide ditches. I will show you another nice example then from Santana. We did a lot of geophysics and so on and so on. It was very difficult to detect houses, to detect habitation areas because of specific problems we have there with the construction, with the material, a lot of loam and wood. And for example, that was a lucky situation to excavate this. And just to show that we are here mainly with these items, these objects in the 15th century. Yeah, this I finished already with Konest because the more exciting site is indeed the fortification of Santana, which is here in the north, just closer to the Upper Seine Mountains and the Moorish River, and in the south is Konest and other but smaller sites, these fortified settlements. It's very well seen in aerial photographs because it's still quite good preserved, but heavily plowed and intensive agricultural usage of the area. This is a LiDAR scan, and we see mainly the fortification 3 within the fortification 1, the ring, and then there is 2. This is, I don't want to comment this now. This is what we do not see here, but on the geomagnetics, this is a line, obviously a fence line, which is dividing this big, huge area of fortification 3, and you see the numbers down here. It's from 20 to 80 hectares area they cover, and we have with number 4 another fortification, a larger one, which we do not know so far because it was not possible yet to extend the geomagnetic measurings to the north and to the west. Yeah, we started in 2018 or continued excavations, which the local partner already continued started since 2009. In 2018, in the frame of our Löwe program, Löwe project, we made large cuttings through the fortifications with up to 5 meter deep fortification ditches filled with burnt material. As you can see here, there was is very interesting 2 phases of burnt material here, which was fallen down from up there, and this is the red thing, and this is the whole rampart. And on the rampart there was a lot of fire. And I will show you two pictures. And again, we have this wide defense system with 2 deep ditches, V-shaped ditches, which are not very easily to get through. Even when you look at the photos, you can imagine you cannot just run through there. The radiocarbon datings of the 3rd fortifications, they are all very similar and show, unfortunately, we have a problem here in the calibration curve by this wriggle. So we always get 2 possibilities, but they cover more or less 1 century. But we cannot so far decide nowadays, is it the older part or the younger part of the distribution here. Therefore, we need more data, more stratigraphical positions. Then finally, perhaps sometimes we can decide that it's more the older half of the century or the younger half of the century. Not only the excavations, but also the plowing bring up a lot of burnt material, and up to 1 ton of 300 to 400 gram and burnt clay projectiles. So this was obviously a very helpful weapon. And just to show how we think that could have been, show this reconstruction. And there must have been at least 1 or even 2 struggles coming from outside and burning down the wooden construction on the rampart, which we can reconstruct from the post holes and so on, and from burnt materials, from burnt charcoal, and big pieces and so on. So this is one of the rare places where we where I can identify violence, heavy violence, and the usage of the slingshots, the slingers, which we didn't know so far in this extent from prehistoric times. Late Iron Age in Britain, Maiden Castle, for example, yes, there. And then we know also from the classical times that slingers were an important part within the armies from the record. Yeah, very important was the large-scale geomagnetical mapping. And what we can see, I mean, this is a gas pipeline, but what we can see is that the fortification 3 and 1 were burned down. And we can see this on this map, and we identified it in the excavation trenches. We could identify a lot of habitation structures on this mapping, on the geophysical mapping or geomagnetic mapping. And there, for example, I can show you this line which led to the number 2 by the Romanian colleagues. Doesn't make too much sense, but they started this to do, and we continue using the numbers. And you see also already in the red circle a big, large building or big structure, which I would like to get closer. First, an impression. This is big farmland, heavily farmed and plowed. And you can imagine here the fortification lines. They are really very heavily plowed, and they will get destroyed in the next 10 years, probably. And in the back, the Upper Seine Mountains, it's 13 kilometers, it's not so far. And in the center is our excavation here in 2021 on a very special place, because we already could see on the LiDAR scan that there is some kind of mound. And here in the aerial photo, this mound is also visible. And then we went there at an earlier stage, and it was a huge mound of here up to 2 meters high and diameter of 50 to 60 meters. So that was obvious that this is an artificial mound. This is not it's not a feature of the natural landscape. And so this is what we've seen in the geophysics, that there were big structures. Structures up to 60 meters in length, several structures up on the same place with the continuity rebuilt. And we started with this graph with the different layers. So to say, there's structure A, structure B, C, and D are the middle rows of posts, which we do not know if they belong only to one period or to several of these objects. You can imagine here again on this map of this drawing of these geomagnetical features that you cannot decide if that these posts belong to that or to the other structure. This is structure C is very difficult to understand because it's very much burnt loam, burnt clay. And then below in the other structures, we found big post holes. Post holes which were, the wood was taken out and refilled. Can you see? Ah, yeah, you see, and they were filled with the same material with which the mount was, like a tell, was filled up. So this is a schematical plan so far, the latest stage from 2020, last year, 2022. And what we can say is this is the oldest one. This is a younger period. And then we have beneath this burned material, underneath also a row of posts. And this is still a problem. They do not belong together. They are different structures. What I want to show you is this part. And this anomaly, which was not very heavy, but it was there. And then finally, this anomaly made sense. Yeah, once again. It made sense because that is, oh, I forgot to write the English word, pavement, plaster flown. And what you can see also is, I will show stratigraphy right enough, there is others above. And this pavement in this area was decorated. It's a floor. It's a floor, a decorated floor, and with geometrical structures, which we know. If I would go to the Central Europe from the Hallstatt period, from the older Iron Age, but not from Bronze Age. This is unique. We are asking a lot of colleagues in different areas. This is very, very unique, and there is no parallel so far to that, but it's very good chronologically fixed. This is here, this is this decorated floor. This is the 109 below, and with lots of radiocarbon dates, and we know, very sure this is 14th century BC. And you see there is a filling. It was filled up in this area with animal bones, with ceramics, with all material we know from settlements. And then another floor was built, and this is also very nicely excavated, and I'm not showing it now, but it's not decorated. The situation of this grid in this area is that here we have this decorated floor, awful burnt material, a lot of charcoal. The younger posts outside from the other structure, from the structure B. And finally, there is another row of posts here, which belong to that building, to the floor. And this is just to show it again. This is this row, which we couldn't see, which we cannot see on the picture I have shown, and the other one is from the younger structure C. And the amazing thing is that in this material, we have decorated plaster covered with white loam. And what we can say now is that this burnt material is not in situ. It was fallen down. It was fallen down from, we have no reconstruction so far because we are very careful. This is very sensible. But it seems as if this was the wall with the posts. And the inside, there is, in the inner part, there is this floor, this decorated floor. And very obviously, this burnt material, a lot of charcoal and well, mud and loam, was fallen down. So the next picture I'm showing you is only a very, very kind of attempt, because we think that the structure of these buildings, I come to that, and this kind of loam, that this is perhaps very a kind of parallel and similarity to that what I would like to show you now. Just to summarize is that it's a very representative architecture. In the center of the whole fortification, in the center of the small fortification one, and this building A is 35 meter long. The structure C is 60 meters long. So this is very, very big for Bronze Age, I mean, in Middle Europe, and very extraordinary. And this is not the only items. We have a lot of metal artifacts, a lot of very good ceramic in that area. And what we have so far is from two places within the structure one, the fortification one, blue glass beds, which are not analyzed so far, but we are very sure, and you see this is the biggest deposit is not far away in Transylvania, in a cave where there is a deposit of several hundreds of these glass beds. And I'm very sure that these are the same type of glass beds from the Eastern Mediterranean, either Mesopotamia or Egypt. And we have this very good chronological fixed points and chronological dating in the 14th century, to which also the decorated floor belongs. Yeah, just to show that this is not only the objects we are looking at, but we always do a lot of very intensive archaeobotanical research, and this is done by my colleague Astrid Stobbe. She's professor for archaeobotany and with a laboratory, belongs to our prehistoric department. And because we want to see what was the economical basis of the people. We are working on the animal bones, of course. There's a master thesis right now running. The bachelor thesis is finished to get an idea on the quality of food, on the question, what kind of people lived there? Were they able to get very good food? And we found in both places, in Coleste and Santana, millet, which is also interesting and important because millet is coming up at that time, 15th, 14th century, going down to the, see here, to the 12th century, to the 13th century. And the millet is new in that period, and it comes into the system, into the economical system from outside, but more than that. Millet, the Carpathian Basin so far, this is the scientific opinion, is dealing like a hub for the spread of millet in different directions. And what we can really draw very, very good is this transfer of goods and materials and of ideas, obviously, from the south to the north, from the north to the south. And especially in the second half of the second millennium and in this 14th century, like Bernstorff, like Santana, like many other places, the glass beds in the oak coffins in the Nordic Bronze Age, they're all from that period, and many other finds and many other structures. And I'm quite sure, I mean, this is a model. We're still at the beginning, that there was a contact with Mycenaean world, with the Mycenaean culture. And of course, people were very much communicating and traveling and being everywhere. And so they looked at each other and they saw, oh, this is something very extraordinary. I also would like to have this. And they start to copy. I mean, copying like the lamps of Kühna, which was copied as a small example, a small object. But I think the ideology of the others, of the higher cultural levels, that was important for people who came in contact with that and who wanted to, to copy it. I mean, and Klaus Kilian, I think he's well known everywhere in the Mediterranean. He described it in the Mycenaean palaces in 1984 as royal residence of the earth, house of the earthy rulers. And in Santana, I mean, both big fortifications, Comest and Santana, are so different. They are from the same period, more or less. At least they cover 1 or 2 centuries of the same periods, and Comest is going down to the beginning of the Iron Age. But they are very different. In Comest, we have no hint of such kind of structures, of such kind of large building, monumental buildings. And in Santana, they are in the center of the fortification, within the Ring 1, from this mount, which was put up to 2 meters at least, there was a very nice view. You can imagine from the aerial or from the drone photos I did show to the south, to the or southeast, to the mountains, to the Ore Mountains. And we ask, with the last question and the last sentence, we ask, of course, what kind of buildings were they? What has been doing there? I mean, we have these exceptional goods. We have a lot of metal objects, very good ceramic. We have the glass beds, the structures itself. We have, but also decorations from the building, obviously, which show that these buildings were not only made of wood and some loam, but they were decorated. And so I think we are not on the wrong side if we say they must have been somehow monumental central buildings, and either they were political, they had a political character, or even a religious character, or you can't divide this, both. And yeah, this was already the end. This is what I wanted to show. This is very new as a new aspect of transfer of ideas, not only goods, and not only copying goods, but also copying, when you say copying lifestyle, copying structures, copying social structures, social, yeah. And I think this is very important. And we have another now with Santana and with this new structures and this new objects, a new hint on this very strong connection between Middle Europe, Northern Europe, and the Eastern Mediterranean. So thank you very much again for inviting me. Thank you for all the listeners in the World Wide Web which took place. This is very nice. And yeah, if you have any questions, please.
Thank you very much, Rüdiger. Thank you for bringing Europe so close to the Eastern Mediterranean. I think this was the first. We have, over the years, we had many lectures over different periods and different places. It was the first time we had